Hey guys, welcome back to Working on It, Real Talk for Modern Men. I'm your host, Anthony Ball, and today we're going to be talking about something that most of us would rather avoid, and that is conflict. Not the kind you see in the movies, no shouting, no slamming doors. I'm talking about the real, everyday tension, the disagreement with your partner about money or parenting, the moment your friend crosses the line and you don't know how to call him out. The job where you're being disrespected, but you stay quiet because you don't want to rock the boat. So that stuff. Now, as men, we're often taught to either dominate conflict or disappear from it, fight or flight, win or walk away. But what if there was a third way? What if we could lean into conflict, not to win, but to grow? Today, we're breaking down why avoiding conflict might be holding you back, how facing it can build real strength, deepen your relationships, and help you become the man you're trying to be. And because this is working on it, we're going to hit pause a few times and invite myself and you to get real. There'll be moments where I'll share my own story, and that's your cue and mine to drop everything and just speak from experience and just go a little bit deeper into our own self and build that self awareness and to see where we can grow. So let's get into it. Why we avoid conflict and what it costs us. Let's be honest, most of us weren't taught how to do conflict. We weren't taught how to survive it. Maybe you grew up in a house where conflict meant yelling, silence, or walking on eggshells. Maybe you were told boys don't cry, don't be emotional, just let it go. So we learn to swallow it, to shut down, to change the subject. And look, avoiding conflict can feel like the smart move. It keeps the peace, it keeps you out of the drama. But here's the cost. When you avoid conflict, you start avoiding yourself. You ignore your gut, you silence your truth, you pretend you're fine when you're not. You're not being authentic, you're suppressing your authenticity. And over time, that builds pressure. It leaks out as irritability, emotional distance, physical distance, or even blow ups over small things, tiny things that make no sense whatsoever. I know this from my own experience. Avoidance isn't peace, it's postponement. And the longer you wait, the harder it gets to speak up. So here's a prompt. Here's a few questions just to ask yourself, and I'll share my story as well. Think of a time you stayed silent when you should have spoken. What were you protecting? What did you lose by not saying something? And when I wrote this message, this question, the memory that came up for me is around my past relationships and particularly my last relationship before my wife. And we had, it was a long relationship, loving relationship, about 7 years. And essentially what happened at that time is I was very numb. I was very suppressed and I wasn't very expressive. And that played out in my relationship and the connection we were having in our relationship. And one area of conflict that kept arising was around sex. And for me, I wouldn't really dive deeper into it. We never really got past the conflict because I was avoiding it. I would just push my needs aside because I was afraid of what it truly meant if I was to really go deeper into why I'm wanting that connection. And essentially, it played out and destroyed our relationship in the sense of certain behaviors that I was doing. And it just pushed us further and further away because I was not getting my needs met I was suppressing them more and more. I was becoming more and more closed off in relationship. And my ex was very in tune and she could sense this. And she obviously wanted a relationship that could find connection. But what that relationship did was it kind of broke me open for me to really dive deeper into what was going on internally for me. So it was a hard time, but what it showed me has given me so much strength and so much growth over these last however many years it's been now. And the growth that's come from that is phenomenal. I'm really grateful for that moment now. But in the moment, it was tough. It was definitely tough in the moment. I would love to hear your stories on that. So if you do feel like sharing them with private DMs or anything like that, just please send me a message on Instagram. It's working on it. Men's podcast. And I read every message. So if you do have anything, please share it. So leaning in where growth happens. What does it mean to lean in? It doesn't mean being aggressive. It doesn't mean trying to win. You know, as men, as competitors, right, so ingrained in us to have that competition, and it can play out in relationships. And that is not going to be a recipe for success. That is a guarantee. Like, take competition out of relationships. It cannot be there. Leaning in means showing up with courage, clarity, and care. It means saying, this is uncomfortable, but I'm not running away. And here's the thing most men don't realize. Conflict is one of the fastest paths to self-awareness. There's so much growth that happens in conflict when you stay in it. We'll talk about shadows later on, but most of the time, there's so much growth that happens in conflict. Because when someone disagrees with you, challenges you, or crosses the line, you're forced to ask, what do I really believe? What am I willing to stand for? Where do I draw the line? Where's that boundary? That's not weakness. That's integrity forming. And the more you step into conflict, that integrity is going to get stronger and stronger within you. And you'll be more and more respected by your peers, by your relationships, by your friends, family, and so on. Every time you speak your truth, even if your voice shakes, you're building internal strength and also internal confidence. And it will just keep building and building. You're not just fixing a problem, you're becoming the kind of man who can handle hard things. Here's another prompt. Tell a moment when you finally spoke up, maybe at work, in a relationship, or with a friend. What was the risk? What changed after? And for me, it comes around my older brother. And I've been working in this area for quite some time for many reasons. And what I'll say is, I love my older brother, but our energies are different. He's very expressive, and I am someone who internalizes and is more reflective and more reserved. So we clash with the way we see how to show up. And that's absolutely fine, because what I get from him, he shows me a lot of how I can grow and how I can speak up more and how I do need to show up in the world more. And I learn so much, like, spiritually from him. But there's been numerous occasions where I have really not wanted to have a conversation with him. And there's been so much resistance, and I talk myself out of it and want to avoid it so freaking much because I'm terrified. I'm terrified because when we were younger, we used to scrap, and he was my older brother. He would always physically dominate me, always. And the fights got pretty strong sometimes. And like I don't mind I loved our relationship growing up. It really strengthened me a lot. But, sometimes our relationship did get toxic, but we have learned a lot from that. But there is fear when I bring up conflict that it is going to result in that again. So I heavily want to avoid bringing those sorts of conversations up with him. But there's been numerous occasions in the past 6, 7 years where I have spoken with him about certain topics. I won't go into detail, but certain topics. And the story I'm telling myself is completely different to the reality of what actually transpires. And when I recognize that the story isn't true, I'm learning new pathways of how to, well, one, I'm learning how that he's not the man I actually think he is, or the man that I'm telling myself he is. And when I allow space in a healthy way, there is good resolution there. So that is one area I'm continually working on. And there's many good experiences from the past to say why I am experiencing what I'm experiencing. But there's also now becoming more and more experiences to tell me why it is no longer true. And there's been a lot of growth and a lot of connection within our relationship through that. Because it would be quite easy to just completely shut down that relationship and disconnect if I wanted. And this kind of leads on to my next area. So conflict builds real connection. So let's talk about relationships, because this is where it really matters. A lot of men think strong relationships mean no conflict. That's a myth. The strongest relationships aren't conflict free. They are conflict capable. Just think about it. If you never disagree with your partner, your brother, your best friend, your work colleague, whatever it is, are you really close? Or are you just surface level? And really think about it. The conflict is there because you care. You care for the relationship. Real connection happens when you can say, I'm not okay with this. And the other person doesn't shut down. When you can disagree without disconnection. That's trust. That's intimacy. And for men, that's rare. And it's powerful. When you sit in discomfort with somebody and still stay connected, you're building something real. So here's another prompt. Who's someone in your life you've had a tough conversation with and actually brought you closer? What made it work? And for me, I reflect on my relationship with my wife. And we have conflict. We do. She's a very passionate, feminine female. Very passionate. She's Spanish. She's got that Latina blood in her. And I love it. And like I've just said about me, you know, I've got my English roots where I'm much more reserved, much more internal in my processing. So the way we express sometimes triggers each other. And it happens depending on the situations and what's happening externally. It can happen more than often. And I had a tough time embracing that in periods of my relationship because I wanted to avoid conflict, thinking conflict was bad. But the more I read on relationships, more study relationships and on courses and books and workshops, I realized that it's actually good. It's actually healthy as long as it's done through the proper means and not more of a destructive aspect. But particular scenario, most recent one was even last night. You know, I was grumpy. I was tired. It'd been a long day playing with the kids and in the heat and everything. And at night time, it was taking our son longer than usual to get to sleep. And I was getting annoyed by it. Internally, I was getting annoyed by it. And my wife just wanted to have connection. And she sent me a message. I got pissed off about it. And I told her. And essentially, we went to sleep with that conflict. But when we woke up, you know, I just expressed, you know, I said sorry and I was just grumpy. And I explained just what I just explained. And that brought connection. And that brought love back. And it brought that, we did that repair. And I had to just let go of my ego because last night I was so like in my ego. And it just wasn't healthy. It wasn't helping the relationship at all. It was just bringing more disconnect. So I had to bring that ego out of it, and I just had to apologize and really express where I was at and let myself be seen where I was at. Now, let's get into the shadow side of conflict. I've got to be real, not all conflict is worth leaning into. There's a difference between healthy tension and toxic drama. Healthy conflict is about understanding. Toxic conflict is about control, manipulation, or power plays. And as men, we can sometimes confuse the two. We think basing it means enduring disrespect, abuse, or gaslighting. But that's not strength, that's self betrayal. Leaning in doesn't mean staying in a job where you're being belittled. It doesn't mean tolerating a partner who weaponizes silence. It doesn't mean keeping it real with someone who's never real with you. Sometimes the strongest move isn't to engage, it's to disengage. Setting a boundary, walking away, protecting your peace. That's not weakness, that is wisdom. So, next prompt in this area: when did you realize a conflict wasn't safe or worth your energy? What did you do? How did it feel to step back? And for this one, again, a memory that comes up is my older brother. And he has a lot of things going on in his life. And when I go back to England, I see more what's going on. And it's a lot, to be honest. And it's quite draining. And I can see that in him. I can see how stressed he is from the situations that he's in. And I know what he truly wants. He doesn't know how to get there. And it's going down many, many paths. I want to help. I want to be there for him. I want to show up for him as much as possible. But there's only so much I can do. And this is nothing on him because he's not asking me. It's just my desire to want to be there for my brother. And it's me needing to set that boundary for myself. I can only do so much. I can only help so much. Right. So my boundary is an internal one of like, what can I do to help? And once I've done that, checking in and seeing where they're at and just be there for that kind of support. Because there is a desire for me to really just want to be there and solve the problem and fix it completely. It's just that natural masculine thing of like wanting to fix problems. But sometimes it's just about being there and knowing that maybe I can't do anything. I can only be there to hold space and to support where I can. Again, I'd love to hear your stories on this. So if there is anything, just so I get to know you as a listener more, hear your stories and see what's going on. I love this sort of work and I love this sort of stories for connection. So if you do have anything, I encourage you to please send me a DM on this. So how do you actually lean in without blowing up or backing down? So a few tools to help with this. The first one, which can sometimes, depending on your personality type, can sometimes be quite difficult or a challenge. But the first one is pause, breathe and ask, what am I feeling? What do I need? The second one, use I statements. I felt disrespected when, instead of you always disrespect me. The third one, listen to understand, not to reply. Be curious. Put down your defense. Hear them. Listen to them. The fourth one, name the shared goal. I think we both want this relationship to work. I think we both want to connect. I think we both want the same, whatever ... this is. Right? Name that as best you can. And if you're not sure, just name what you think it could be. And then naturally, the person you're in conflict with will say, no, that's not what I want. And then you can just go deeper and deeper into that. And the fifth one, repair when you mess up, like I explained earlier. I came at that wrong. Can we try again? I was triggered yesterday. I'm sorry. I know you just wanted connection. And I love you. It's not about being perfect. It's just about being present. and wanting to build a relationship. As humans, we crave connection. We crave those relationships. And the best way we can do this is being vulnerable with what's going on internally for ourselves. And that's what real strength looks like. So, some closing thoughts on this topic. So, look, conflict isn't the enemy, avoidance is. Leaning into conflict doesn't make you difficult, it makes you develop, makes you grow. It means you're willing to be uncomfortable so you can grow, so your relationships can deepen, so you can become the man you're working to be. So next time you feel that urge to shut down or walk away, pause, ask, what's really at stake here? And what might be possible if I stay? Because growth doesn't happen in the comfort zones. It happens in courage zones. We want to lean to our edges here. This is what we spoke about in a previous podcast, living at our edge. Really lean into that courage, that edge, and you will grow in that space. And men will love to see that. They want to see true men, true masculine men want to see you working on that edge. So thanks for being here. If this episode hit home, share it with another brother who needs to hear it. And what I'd really love is for you to leave a comment or a review, as it really helps for the podcast to grow. I also get to know you more, get to see what's going on, share any topics you'd like me to talk about, to discuss. I read all the messages. You can send me a DM on Instagram, workingonit.menspodcast. Until my next episode, keep working on it. I'm Anthony Ball.